Okay. You go high.
All right.
You go low.
All right.
And I'll go middle. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
The
Boon. Welcome back to the Boon.
Boom.
Okay, we have Coach Lima today.
What's up? I have candy in my mouth. That was not a good idea. The top country that I want to visit that I haven't visited yet.
Yeah.
I'll say Australia.
Really?
That was horrible, huh? It was like Australia. I think so. Or anywhere in the Caribbean islands or Greece. Somewhere with the beach. Like, I don't know. I really wanted to go to Australia this past summer because the Women's World Cup was there. Mm-hmm. And it was like this huge deal about it. And it was, well, it was the biggest Women's World Cup ever. What about you? If you had a country there, like you say, I want to go, what would it be?
Poland.
Okay.
Because I've seen like pictures and like their buildings are like so pretty. Like just the architecture and stuff there.
Okay.
Is really pretty.
I've never been there, so I can't say much. But I do know that everywhere in Europe is like super historical and stuff like that. So, and like when I went to Germany, for example, I went to Berlin, and I never expected like the energy is so weird, where the wall was built and stuff. And I mean, they still have parts of the wall there, right? So you can visit a museum that was built on the wall, where the wall was, and like. They left a piece actually, and for me it was just insane. So inside the museum it was like a couch like this, and there was a TV right there, and the wall literally like right in between the house. Like they just built the wall, cutting the house. So basically, like if you live there and someone was on that side, they would just be like living on that side of the world, and the rest of the family on this side because they just did not care.
Yeah.
And the energy is just so heavy around there, you know?
Yeah.
So it was very, like, I didn't like it, but it was very interesting to see. I know it was not related to World War or anything, but we had a time in Olga, do you know who that is? I don't know, now I can't remember if she was in Brazil or somewhere else. I know I had to read the book. And it was very interesting to read, but I know she was incarcerated too and couldn't leave and things like that, but now I can't remember where she's from. I really can't.
Well, I don't know.
I guess y'all gonna have to research Olga, Olga.
There we go. We have to be...
Up to you. Now you tell me.
What's it called? Informative.
Yeah.
And inquisitive.
I guess. Sure.
Do you know what that word means?
No. Explain it.
Inquisitive?
Yes.
It's like questioning things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I could have figured that out.
In context, it's...
Yes.
Well, and I'm about to write another essay. I'm about to use all the crazy words.
I know, guys. So she's in my class. And we had to write a 500-word essay, minimum, right? So this girl comes to me. So what's the maximum I can write? And I'm like, oh gosh. Here I am having to read an essay with 10,000 words. No. She wrote about 1,500, 1,200. It was something like that.
Yeah, 1,200 about, yeah.
So I'm reading, and I'm like, she used all these like formal words, okay? I was able to figure them out, but two of them I was like, girl, for why? Well, I asked her, she explained, got the essay, but yeah, no.
That's just the way I write, though.
Okay, fancy.
I don't know how I'm supposed to write.
No, that was good. I should be doing better. That's what's up. Well, but I guess when you come from another country, and then English is not your first language. Yeah. And it's so funny because when I lived in Brazil and I started wanting to come here and stuff, and over there in middle school, high school, you have the choice. You could take Spanish or English. I still have to take Portuguese class, like, of course, you'll have to do English, right? I have Portuguese, I have literature, all of that. But then I had to choose between English and Spanish. And I hated English, like, did not like it. And Spanish is a lot more similar to Portuguese, right? So I was like, Well, I was a typical high school student, y'all. So the least amount of work I could do, that's what I did. So I definitely chose Spanish, right? I'm like, this is very similar to Portuguese.
Yeah.
I had been to Argentina already, which they speak Spanish. So I had contact with the language and things like that. So I went the Spanish route all my high school years. But then my mom always like knew the important. I mean, you have to speak English. It's the world language, you know. It's the universal language. I mean, so mom was like, no, you don't have the option. So I had extracurricular, like a little course that I would go for English, and I never wanted to go. I still struggle with like it's pronouns, in, on, at, prepositions. I can't, like, I struggle with those. Off, on, in, at, like, I never know which one goes with it, which. So that is something that I struggle with in terms of the language. But I feel like my grammar, because that's what we study. Like, when you're out of the country, you study a lot of the grammar. That's what it is taught. But it's, sometimes I stop and I'm like, who made the language up?
I think, dude, me too.
All the time. I'm like, it's just so interesting. Like, who came up and like, oh, this is going to be called a camera. Like, why? But then in Portuguese it's something else. Then in Spanish. And that, like, and if you know the language, you know the meaning. That is insane to me, you know? It's just very, very interesting to me. But then what you mentioned, that some stuff makes no sense. It's like when someone asks me to say something in Portuguese and they're like, what? Why do you spell it like this? You not even say this letter. And I'm like, okay, in English, do you say know, knowledge, knife? No, like the K is silent, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that's how it is.
Whenever I took Spanish classes, I was really good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of it was memorizing and just, you know, putting that into practice. So like, I can read Spanish. Actually, I'm kind of bad at it now because I've been out of practice. Used to, like, I could read Spanish, I could write Spanish, like, I could speak it, but I could not have a conversation because whenever other people are speaking it, it's too fast for me. Like, it has to be like,
Paused.
Yeah, I know I talk so fast. I'm like, I just don't understand how. I think about like, oh, if I can't even understand them talking and they're like probably not even talking that fast.
Yeah.
And then I'm talking this fast. And then it's like, how do other people understand?
It is like, and I noticed that a lot when like my mom comes visit, you know. I speak very fast. I speak very fast in English. I speak very fast in Portuguese. I speak very fast in Spanish. Everything. Spanish is a little bit slower because I'm not fluent. I've lost a lot of it. I used to be. But it's just my poor mom when she comes in here. She's like, she's starting to understand, but she's like, y'all just speak so fast. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there is all. If you ever learn a new language, nobody's gonna teach you the little slangs that we talk about, like gonna. Y'all, you know, they're going to teach you the proper way of speaking the language, or the little, what are they called? Like when you say something that it doesn't mean what each word means, but it makes sense on the vocabulary. Like, for example, I'm going to tell you something that in Portuguese has a meaning behind, but in English you're going to be like,
Okay.
Like you broke the stick of the tent.
Okay.
Like, you know, for you it makes no sense, but for us, like when we say stuff like that, it's like, oh, you're out of place. That's what it means. What are those called?
Oh, like, what's it called? It's like sayings, right?
Yes. Is that what it's called?
Like,
Sayings?
Yeah, like, what's it called? Like, early bird gets a worm or something like that.
Yes. So, like, okay, if I translate that to Portuguese, like, it makes no sense, but there's a meaning behind, you know?
Right.
So, and we use those more than we think. So I started noticing things like this when I have family visiting, or even when I go back to Brazil now. People are like, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, here? And they're like, oh, well, you have an accent. So apparently now I have an accent in Portuguese. And I don't know a bunch of words. Sometimes I'm texting my mom and I totally misspell the word. And she's like, Jessica, come on. That's not how you spell that. And I'm like, oh, Mom, it has been too long, you know? Mm-hmm. So, like, that's what for me is also so interesting. Like, if you don't use the language, if you're not immersed on that world, it is very hard to keep knowing, you know? Like, I know Portuguese because, I mean, I've lived there for 17 years.
Right.
But my Spanish, that was something that I had to learn and don't have much contact with. I've lost a lot of it. So...
Yeah, that's the same with me. Because it's about, like, doing it every day.
Yeah.
I have always wanted to know. So, like, whenever you... Like, do you have to, like, translate in your head before you talk in English?
So...
Or do you, like, think in English? Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally makes sense. So nowadays I think in English. Like Portuguese not even comes to my head. But now when I'm speaking Portuguese, some of the words I have to think in English and translate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it changed. When I got here, it was translating Portuguese to English, so it was slow. Now it's definitely just boom, 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 boom. Yeah, no, and like when I'm flying home, every time like a flight attendant or someone would come speak to me, I'll be like in English, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I should not be speaking English. Like it's Portuguese now, you know. Nowadays, for me, I feel like English is more I cannot say first language because that's not what I learned first, but it's definitely
like
something that I'm more comfortable with.
Primary, right?
Yeah, than I am with Portuguese. Mm-hmm. Like Portuguese is starting to get tough right now. That is so sad to say, though.
Yeah. Is there, do you have any customs or traditions or just, you know, like something you did that you've lost coming over here?
I feel like I came so young and I never paid attention to it. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so funny that nowadays I pay attention to some stuff that in the past I just lived it, you know? So while living in Brazil for the first 17 years of my life, I never really, and it's something that like we could mention too. When you live in a country, you don't notice much of the cultures and the habits and all of that until you leave, you know? So like living there was just like, oh, that's how we go through life, you know? And then when I came in here, I was like, well, they don't have this holiday. Well, they don't eat this thing. Well, you know? So it's not that I missed or anything like this, but I stopped celebrating just because it's a different lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that I'm like, oh, I wish we did this, you know? Now, there are a lot of customs from the U.S. that I very much adapted to it and I really enjoy. For example, Thanksgiving. We don't have it in Brazil, and I love Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Christmas here is a lot more fun because it's during the cold, and that's what you watch on the movies, you know?
Yeah.
In Brazil, it's summer, so it's super hot. So, like, I feel like everybody that have never been to the U.S., they have the perspective of the U.S. being what movies show. And it is very similar, you know? So the first time I came here and it was Christmas and it was snowing, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so much fun. For me, country is just so interesting because of language, culture, food, and then weather. Like, what does that country has to add to me? And I love seeing all the different things, you know?
I think, actually, you know what's so interesting to me is because, like, you talk about, like, cultural assimilation. U.S. culture's everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like, it has infiltrated everything. Mm-hmm. But then you also think about the fact of, like, how much other stuff we have here. Not that we don't adapt it to our own stuff, but, like, you know, like, in New York, you have, like Chinatown and, like, Little Italy and, like, that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's just interesting, like, how much other culture we have here, too.
Oh, yeah.
Though, like, we spread our culture everywhere, but it's, like, here, too.
Girl, if you go to Florida, all you're going to see is Brazilians.
Really?
Oh my gosh, I hate going there. I hate going there because I feel like I'm in Brazil. Like Disney World, all Brazilians. Yeah, I cannot even make fun of what they're wearing because they know what I'm saying.
Do you remember when was it? Okay, you remember when we walked across that bridge that Carla was dying?
Oh, in Indiana.
And we went in that shop. There was that couple in the...
Guys, they were on their first date, and it was not going well.
Okay, you be that girl, and I be like... So the guy was, like, leaning over the...
And the girl was just with her little
he was,
cup.
Like, talking, like, big movements. He was like, oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
she was just like...
And it was so bad. I would be sick.
And me, Shelby, and Sydney, because it was Sydney, right? Mm-hmm. We were just there, and we were like... Do you think this is your first date? And they're like, definitely. Do you think she's liking it? No. She was not having the time of her life.
Into the corner.
She was ready to go home. Going back to the culture, that's one thing that Americans are very different than most of the world from what I've been. Is like the culture here is so ingrained on the person that you leave to work. It's like work. Like if you even think about our students, right? Mm-hmm. Work. They just want to get out of here and work because they want to make money because they work. Like in other cultures, not a lot like that, you know? Especially in the European culture. It's like my time, and like they don't get to work until like 9-10. Yeah. And like they're done at 4. And that's it. Yeah. That's their work day, and they're done. And guess what? They're living perfect and everything is working. He is just like, we gotta work, you gotta submit this, you gotta have a deadline, and we gotta do extra. And I'm just like,
it's so much.
I have no time. Well, teachers have no time.
That's true. Like, because I don't even work, and I still don't have time.
Yeah. Well, but you have a lot of extra curriculum.
Well, I mean, like, that's the only... If I didn't
like
have that stuff, I would be working.
But that would definitely be something good for you. Like, I think that's teaching you a lot of discipline, organization, skills, hard work, you know, that in the future is going to be a big benefit for you. But it is something that you're not going to see any other culture, like a high school student that is busy all day that not even has time. One thing that also, like, you talk about the very fast-paced life in everything. Like here, you never sit and enjoy a meal with somebody. Like here is just like eat and go. Mm-hmm. You know, like back home, when it's time to sit, it's like, let's enjoy what we're eating. Let's spend some time together. Like he's like, oh, let's go grab food so we can go do something else. It's never let's enjoy our food, let's enjoy our time. Like restaurants is just like boom, 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 sit, pay, go, sit, pay, go, sit. Like
even for like our nice, like in Snyder,
even
like
nicer,
our nice restaurants, like it's still
fast paced. Yeah, I ended up following on that here just because I started living here and all of that. But I'm very much like being careful with this right now. Just this fast-paced life, you never pay attention, and then that's what I think brings so much mental health problems.
Yeah.
You know, so and I was kind of following on that trap. So I was like, no, I need to slow down. I need to take a step back. You know, and it's simple details that you can change that is gonna make a huge difference on your mental health and things like that. So that is definitely something that I think needs to be changed here in the US, that we could use the example of other cultures or other countries to make it better.
Like everything is continually like, what's the fastest way we can do this? Like what's, you know, not even necessarily like what's the best fix anymore. No. It's just like, how can we get this done the fastest?
It's just let's get it done.
Yeah.
It's not how can we best get it done, it's we gotta get it done. Yeah. You know, and just getting it done is not the best way.
Okay, so that's all we have today. And we need to say bye.
Night bye, right?
No. Night bye.
Night bye.
Night bye.
Okay.
Night bye.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Night bye.